I've been doing YouTube for about 4.5 years now, and I don't know if I've ever needed to talk about something with such haste before. Ooh, bitch. Ooh, bitch. We gotta talk about the substance today. Oh my god. But first of all, obviously, I need to introduce myself. I'm sorry for coming on a little bit strong, but my name is Kylie, and of course, I go by Haunted Hippie on this channel. And for many, I also go as Maggot Mother, the Antichrist, the Dark Mistress. You know, this is kind of where I run my online virtual cult of horror movie lovers. You may join by clicking subscribe, and then also click the like button, the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. By now, even though the substance just released this past weekend, I'm sure that you've been hearing the buzz for a while now. I'm gonna get into all my spoiler-free thoughts first, and then we will do a spoiler section, even though the movie just came out, because how can I not? This movie is so insane, so I will give you a spoiler warning, don't worry. Let me set the stage for you, alright? I had heard a lot of the hype about this movie, not in any type of detail. I had seen a few images from the movie, and I was gripped just from the first poster release alone. The imagery of her laying on the tile with that giant incision up her back, that was enough to give me the ultimate ick. I also felt in my soul, oh, this is about to be a body horror masterpiece. I didn't know anything else about it. I knew that it was starring Demi Moore. I knew that it starred Margaret Qualley. I didn't even know that it starred Dennis Quaid, but that was it. Maybe I saw a few other images here and there, but I really try to avoid all that kind of stuff when a movie that I'm highly anticipating is coming out. And I don't even know if I knew about this movie's existence prior to like when it released at Cannes. That was about 4 months ago, and I think that was when it first started generating a lot of hype. So I never watched a trailer. I went in completely blind to like what even the basic synopsis of this movie was. I just knew in my soul that it was gonna be a feminist body horror masterpiece. And it was, but somehow managed to completely exceed expectation. I felt this movie like from the depths of my literal asshole. That's graphic. Let me explain. This movie is about feminine self-hatred. It is about women in entertainment and the violence that we inflict upon ourselves to maintain youth, relevancy, whatever, to maintain our appeal to the male gaze. Ooh, you can see it's the corner, it's the little tip of my water bottle, just the tip. It was such a vulnerable exploration, but in such a high intensity way. So that even if you love this movie or if you hate it, it's probably gonna make you severely uncomfortable. I know I was, because I'm looking at a woman that is around my age and how she is meant to be the picture of perfection. And then I'm looking at Demi Moore, who was probably 60 when they shot this movie, and it's a very self-critical kind of take. I suppose maybe it's worth giving a trigger warning if you're someone that's ever experienced any issues with eating disorders, with, you know, body dysphoria, dysmorphia, whatever, but also because it is really sensitive with that subject matter, that's also why it feels so personal and why it resonates so much. So I think it's worth the challenge to step in with this one. I feel like I can talk about some of the director's intentions and stuff because it doesn't get into any spoilers. I haven't even given you a synopsis yet, so we're gonna talk about that a little bit. Also, fair warning, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce Coralie Fargeau. I am pronouncing it in the way that the moderator of the TIFF Q&A shouted her name as she graced the stage.
For Coralie Fargeau!
She is French, and I am not, okay? Coralie Fargeau. So we're doing our best here, but basically, the inspiration from this movie came from her being in her mid-40s. Even though she self-identifies as a feminist, and she's someone that like consciously works to move herself away from male validation and the male gaze, she still fell victim to all of the things that our heads are pumped full of in terms of our appearance and our worth in society. She was battling these feelings of feeling like she was going to become irrelevant or become invisible, that her worth was just going to evaporate because she's like approaching 50. So naturally, this movie might seem a little bit shallow to people that like aren't really with the program. This, maybe it hit me so hard in particular because I actually work in entertainment. My first job ever when I was 16 was modeling. So yeah, I have a lot of experience from a very young age being told that my worth is directly tied to how skinny I am, how pretty I am, how young I am. There might be no dialogue in more than half of this movie's runtime, and a lot of that runtime is dedicated literally just to observing the two leads' bodies. When we're exploring Demi Moore's body, it's a lot more measured. It seems a lot more critical, the way that she is touching herself. When we see Margaret Qualley, who is sort of meant to be the picture of perfection, it's very high intensity. The score also, oh mama, it's so good. I think that you can definitely compare it to Challengers. This is the most excited that I have been in the theaters this year since Challengers, and I think it's largely because of the music. Because when you have been working out a lot, you are seeing the results, you're looking at your body, it feels that way. It feels high intensity. It feels sexual. I might be a little all over the place, I'm sorry, but I gotta circle back. I mentioned how this might seem a little bit surface level because on the surface it might seem like we are just ogling these women's bodies, and Margaret Qualley's, specifically from sort of a male gaze perspective. It might seem that way, but I'm here to tell you that I had never felt more seen by the framing of their bodies. The way that it was framed, it felt exactly like how I observe myself. The camera felt exactly like my eye of self-obsession. And I don't mean that in a way to say I'm full of myself, but that's what society has told me. Being young and having the body that society most values, that was how I was conditioned to look at myself. So I don't believe that was done intentionally to cater to the male gaze whatsoever. That felt like the very self-obsessed, self-critical female gaze. I also watched a couple of interviews just to confirm that, and they didn't talk too much about the different types of gazes, but all that Coralie was talking about was how this came from her own sense of self-worth.
I hope the movie is not an exploitation of the body. Well, indeed, that my point was really to stress that our body, I think as women, really define a lot how we are viewed in society, and the kind of violence we can address to ourselves kind of reflects the violence that I think surrounds us in each stage of society.
Another reason why I've seen very few people be critical about this movie is that the male characters are surface level. I really hate to break this to anybody, but again, I work in entertainment. I worked on my first large movie set at the age of 19. There are men in the industry that are exactly like that. And Coralie Fargeau, she will even echo this sentiment. She's been in the entertainment industry, I think, at least a couple decades longer than me.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's a caricature. I think guys like that really existed, not recently still exist.
And I even was talking about this with my partner when we walked out of the theater, and I was like, I really liked the framing of the men because this is going to be a tangent, but the use of sound design also is so exquisite. It makes everything 10 times more disgusting. It's so intimate and up close and personal, and all of the sound just caters to that. So they do this a lot with the men, and sometimes it almost feels like this fisheye type lens, and Dennis Quaid will just be right in your face. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely have felt sexually defensive in the wake of men thinking they can come into my space like that. Wow. There's also another scene where he has really disgusting and poor table manners, and it just reminded me, like, yeah, I was always taught to chew with my mouth closed, to not speak with food in my mouth, to make myself small at the dinner table, you know. I grew up going to cotillion as well. I don't know about you guys. And yet the very people that taught me that, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry to like throw you under the bus, but I constantly have to remind him now, hey, Dad, I don't really like it when you smack your mouth when you eat. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so I was talking with my partner after the movie, and he was like, yeah, I just thought that the men in the movie were kind of basic. I thought that the framing of them was kind of basic. I thought that maybe the misogyny should be a little bit more nuanced. And I'm like, sometimes it's not nuanced. You don't know this because you're never gonna experience it, but men like that very much exist in literally that exact form. It comes across as campy in this movie, and maybe it comes across as basic, but it's literally real. I don't think that there was another way to do that. I also love the campier moments of this movie. It really picked and chose its moments, because for a lot of the runtime, I'm choking back my vomit. But then sometimes I'm busting up laughing, and I was one of the only people in my theater that was doing so, because I live in a little suburb, and I don't think that this movie is really made for the burbs. I mean, it's not, but like that's why it is for the burbs, because a lot of these ladies I feel like need to see it and experience this catharsis. But that's just to say that I don't think a lot of like, you know, normie audiences in this wide release are gonna be getting the humor. I don't think that they're gonna understand that it's okay to laugh, because it is so freaky and it's so fucked up, and I don't want to overhype it because I just don't want to mess with anybody's expectations. I found it really difficult not to hype myself up because I had to get off Twitter the day that I was going to see it. Tons of people are posting about it. This is the type of movie that you go see and you just cannot shut up about it. But they were saying, this is the freakiest thing you'll ever see, no matter what you're expecting, like get rid of those expectations. The last 20 minutes, you're never going to see it coming. And I have to tell you that that's true. There's nothing that I can say that can really prepare you, and maybe you've seen the trailer so you'll go in more prepared than me, but it's true. This is, I think, the freakiest movie that I've ever seen. I don't want to give any specific comparisons. I just will say that this instantly became a body horror classic. Fargeau is gonna go down as one of the best to ever do it, and I hope that she keeps doing it. You know who else I hope keeps doing it is Demi Moore. Wait, Demi? Do I not know how to pronounce any of these women's names? Anyway, I'm looking through and I don't think I'd literally seen a single one of her movies before. I do want to watch Ghost with Patrick Swayze. Seems cute. I need to see A Few Good Men. I understand that that's a classic. I need to see Charlie's Angels. But I'm so sorry, Miss Moore. I was not familiar with your game. I was very familiar with Margaret Qualley because I just have seen a handful of her projects. She picks and chooses roles with a hell of a lot of range, going from brainwashed hippie girl in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to Texan lesbian. This is my favorite thing that I have ever seen either of them do. It's the best thing I've ever seen Dennis Quaid do, and that's including The Parent Trap. And that was a staple of my childhood. Mama. I don't think there's another horror movie that's gonna top The Substance this year. I gave it 5 stars, and honestly, like, I was sitting there going, wow, I wouldn't change a thing. This is perfect cinema. But I didn't even give it 5 stars for that reason. I gave it 5 stars, like I said on Letterboxd, for the sheer fucking insanity. Yes, we have David Cronenberg, and he has a vast filmography that I've yet to explore, but I don't think that anyone has a grip on body horror the way that a woman does. Just being a woman is a violent experience. We experience childbirth. We experience the bulk of sexual assault. Even if we don't experience assault, all of us women have 1,000,003 stories about creepy men that we've encountered. There will be some in the very comment section of this video. Or if not just creepiness, then outright violence. You'll find that in this comment section too. Stupid woke liberal agenda. Making this movie just so obviously seemed like an act of power to reject the centuries of standards that have been placed on women, especially in entertainment. It was a huge middle finger, especially to Hollywood, because I think that those standards are the most egregious here. I live near and work in LA, by the way. And again, just once more to rebuttal the claims that this movie is shallow. Just because something is simple and a very, very direct metaphor does not mean it's shallow. For anybody that this film resonates, that in and of itself is deep. I even was compelled several minutes ago to say that I felt this movie from the depths of my asshole. Like, I don't usually say stuff like that. This movie carries a deep, deep truth about womanhood. Examining the violence that women inflict upon themselves in order to cater to society is not a shallow topic. There is no way in which it can be. I'm sure that in the past there are movies with really direct metaphors that I have probably called shallow, but I would only say that in the case of a movie not handling some type of very inherent truth. The Substance is a movie that I connected to in a way that I never really knew what was possible. It is really true what they say, that the audience doesn't know what they want or need until you give it to them, and Coralie Fargeau, she gave that to me. I think I gotta cap myself off here for the spoiler-free section, because there is a good deal more rambling to do with the spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, I highly, highly recommend it. I don't care how far you need to drive, you need to see this in theaters. You will feel the sound design in the depths of your soul, and also a lot of this imagery, it is meant to be large. It's meant to be very in your face. Something with this technical of an assessment on the female body, you need a big screen. I don't know how else to tell you, so go out and see it. This is currently my highest recommendation of the entire year in terms of horror, so please go see it. I will be waiting here whenever you get back to talk about spoilers. I'm gonna have to contain myself, otherwise this review is gonna end up being like an hour long, but literally from the very first shot of this movie, I was hooked. The eggs splitting apart, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in for it here. Are we talking about birth? There was also the possibility that it was just imagery to tie into fertility, womanhood, whatever. I didn't care. I was here for it. But it's just imagery of this egg yolk being injected with the substance and then another yolk splitting off of it. And initially I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know the synopsis of this movie. Then we see this whole montage of the life of a Hollywood star. And just from that could have been a short film in and of itself. The fact that we saw its whole lifespan and how sped up it was, that honestly is how quick it feels for some women. I know that I've kind of brought this up recently because I just can't help but apply whatever I'm going through to the art that I watch. That's how art should be though, by the way. So no apologies there. I just turned 25 and so I'm kind of thinking about my 5-year plan. 30 is like this big scary age for women, mostly because of beauty standards and then also secondarily the fact that they tell you, oh hey, the quality of your eggs starts to decline when you turn 30, by the way. There even was a line about that in The Substance. Oh my god, but he said 25 when you're 25. And a lot of your worth as a woman, if you don't fit the typical beauty standards, don't worry, if you can have children, you're still worthy of society. You still have something to contribute. So this movie was making me reflect on the fact that I just turned 25. I had a mini quarter life crisis. I was telling my partner, because we're talking about when we want to start having kids, like, do we have a 5-year plan? I was saying, like, I don't want to give up who I am to become a mom. I feel like a lot of people, they become mothers and then they feel like that's all they are. I don't want to look back and be like, damn, I used to be a person, you know? So I told him, I was like, I'm not giving any of that up. Like, if we're going to be partners, like, you gotta support me still chasing my career. I want to have it all because I can. And this movie made me reflect specifically on how quickly I feel like I got here. I am so young. I am 25 and I already feel like all this pressure to start accomplishing these things because of my body, because of the perceptions of the female body that have been instilled in me and how I'm like running out of time. So from the opening montage, I was like, I am in very, very safe and competent hands. Anyway, then we're introduced to Elizabeth and she is this TV personality. It's very 80s. I thought this was a period piece at first until like 3/4 of the way through the movie they start talking on iPhones. Maybe it was sooner than that, but whatever. It just was late and I was like, oh wait, what? But anyway, the inciting incident happens in the bathroom scene, which is one of my favorite. Done in a oneer, mind you. When Dennis Quaid gets so up close and personal to the camera, that's what I was referencing earlier. Again, within the first 15 minutes, I was like, oh, this girl knows how to frame annoying ass men. And you know what? You know why I think that some men call this movie shallow or why it made them so uncomfortable? It's because there's not a single man in this movie that is, there's not really a term for it. I'm gonna compare it to the white savior trope. How in cinema history, there are almost no films where there isn't a white savior, even in movies about like slavery and stuff. It's the Brad Pitt in 12 Years a Slave. As Jordan Peele says, it's the person in the movie to let the white audience members know, don't worry, you're okay, because that's you. You're one of the good ones. Don't worry. There's not a single good man in this movie. They are all just caricatures. Because you know what, babes, men, it's not about you. It's not about you today, okay? Oh, this review really is gonna be an hour long if I can't stop going on tangents. Distraught Elizabeth overhears him talking about how she needs to be replaced because she's old. And so on her way out of the studio, she gets into a car wreck and one of the nurses offers her the substance and claims that it changed his life, thus instigates her seeking it out. And we get what will become one of the most iconic body horror scenes in all of cinema history. Like, I'm convinced. Never have I ever witnessed a birthing scene like this before, when Elizabeth gives birth to Sue. And I'm not gonna get caught up in all of the weeds here because there is the back and forth. It's a very direct metaphor exploring the violence that women inflict upon themselves to maintain their beauty, according to societal beauty standards, let me be clear. But what I took away from the movie that I think was the intention was that the more that you try to cling on to your youth, the more that you experiment with these dangerous procedures, the more that you actually age yourself. And I really want to avoid any type of body shaming. That is not my intention here, but it seems like on a wider scale now, people are starting to notice that when women in their 20s even are getting preventative bullshit Botox, that it's actually aging them quite a bit faster. And do whatever you gotta do to make yourself feel beautiful. I personally am pretty anti-Botox and filler because I just don't feel like they do a good enough job educating people about all the risks. And also because majority of research and anecdotal evidence suggests that it actually does does age you faster. Once you start, there is no stopping if you do want to maintain a youthful look, especially with Botox. And then that's not even getting into how much higher the beauty standards are now, from the ultra skinny phase of the 90s and early 2000s to now. There are so many different procedures that people can get done on their bodies. Boob jobs have been around for a while, but you have to go under. You go under general anesthesia to get a boob job done. And while that healing process can usually be really quick and easy, it's minimally invasive, like that's generally one of the safer procedures. Going under general anesthesia is insane. Like that is no joke. And then there's also BBLs. There are safer procedures like air sculpting where they remove the fat from your body. A lot of that stuff wasn't around when I was a kid, but is very much gaining popularity now. When I was a kid, it'd be like, oh, whoa, she definitely just got a full facelift. Now there are really subtle things like the ponytail lift. You can just do the neck lift. You can do the fox eye, you know? The fact that literal surgery to maintain beauty standards has become normalized is just terrifying. This movie is obviously such a direct response to that. That was everything that was going through my mind as Sue was just stealing more and more from Elizabeth. And the fact that they began to see each other as different people, that they forgot that they were one. Trigger warnings for weight and everything. I'm not like really getting into it here, but it just reminded me of the fact that anytime I start to gain a little bit of weight, which is like totally normal at my age, my body is like getting ready to have babies, that I look at that as a moral failing and I'm like, oh my God, like I look so horrible, like I'm gaining weight, I gotta figure out different ways to dress myself, oh my God. And then I look back at a picture from like 2 years ago when I was having all those thoughts and I'm like, I was so skinny, I looked great, like, oh my God, mental illness. You start to separate yourself from the person that you were, and even the person that you are in the mirror. You start to not be able to recognize yourself when you stop looking like a teenager. At least that's been my experience. Because society has told us to idolize our teenage bodies. When we were at our skinniest, when our skin was the smoothest, before there was any sun damage and any wrinkles, when everything's all perky, you know, that was what Sue embodied. Then it becomes a battle with yourself, which was what the third act of this movie represented. Elizabeth trying to kill Sue, Sue actually killing Elizabeth, Sue clinging on to this New Year's special. I loved the part where she ran into Dennis Quaid and like all of the investors. I forget his name. When she's lost her teeth and they ask her to smile. Very campy, intentionally very funny, but I think that was definitely a big instance why my partner was thinking that the male representation was really basic, that there was no nuance to the misogyny. Again, I don't know how many times I have to tell you, men exist like that in that raw form in entertainment. They are all over the place. They are crawling up the walls and crawling up out of the gutters. When I was 19 on that movie set, there was a guy that was like, I guess Ryan Phillippe's trainer or something. Yeah, I'm calling you out, Steve, because you know what? You shouldn't have been talking to me like this when I was 19. I'd be doing my little PA shit, like carrying something super heavy from location to location on this set. And he'd be just, you know, hanging out, having coffee with some of the other dudes, like maybe some of the producers. And I'd walk by just grunting and he's like, hey, give us a smile. And you know who fucking gave them a smile because she was young and she didn't know better? Oh my God. Then I grew a little older and I see pictures of Keanu Reeves and he is helping all of the crew to carry equipment up and down that huge staircase. And I'm like, that's a real man. Like, talent could help out if they wanted to. The producers could help out if they wanted to. But the hierarchy of set can be a real bitch if you're on the wrong one. Sorry, I've gotten really far away from talking about the actual movie, but obviously it's just made me reflect on a lot. Let's just move ahead to the very Carrie-esque moment during the New Year's Eve show. I loved it so much. Maybe my favorite moment from that scene is when her head sort of births out a boob, because I was like, yeah, I mean, isn't that what the audience wants? All you want to do is ogle these women. Like, their value is based in how they look and how perky their boobs are. There's a boob. Like, what do you want? Aren't you happy with that? Look, this gorgeous creature is literally producing boobs now. Like, shouldn't you consider yourself lucky? But no, obviously not. And then like her arm or something becomes this blood hose and everybody's screaming and banging on the walls. I was like, oh, this is so Carrie. I love this. And then the imagery afterwards of Elizabeth crawling in her face goop form to become one with her Hollywood star. I feel that's very self-explanatory and just amazing. What a way to end the movie. Those last 20 minutes, everyone was right. I did not see that coming. And this movie just is a testament to how much women have had had to fight for in the industry. This gave me so much hope as a woman that is fighting tooth and nail currently to get to a similar position, hopefully by the time I'm, Fargeau's age. She talked, I think in the Collider interview, about that she just was so proud that she always maintained her vision. That was something she had to fight for. She had to fight for pretty much every ounce of the budget because of course this is a movie that a studio would want to come in and be like, are you sure about this? Do you want to change that? Maybe, are you sure? Are you sure? And she was like, yep, and she did it. And she got this movie made and it's having a wide theatrical release. This just is a feat in cinema history, period. There's no disputing that, and I'm so happy to be alive at the same time as this movie, especially as I was already considering all of this in my life. It just came to me at the perfect time. I'm so interested to hear all of your thoughts and theories down below. Don't be shy, but also don't be annoying. I just think that over the course of the next week especially, more and more thoughts are going to continue to pour out of me. So just keep an eye out for my September recap because I'm sure that I'll be talking about it even more then. So here's another reminder to subscribe. If you made it to the end of the video, then what are you doing if you're not already subscribed? Click the notification bell so that you make sure to see that video. I also have tons of other reviews of horror movies that have come out this year. This is a horror channel. I mean, obviously because I'm kind of coming to you live from hell, but I also have a second channel where I talk about physical media and I post my travel vlogs. In just about a month, I will be releasing the vlog that I shot visiting all of the Halloween 1978 shooting locations. I'm super excited about that. So go check that out. You can also check out my Patreon where there is even more bonus content. I post over there weekly depending on which tier you're subscribed to. You can also find all my social media linked down below. Go crazy, have fun. More than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye.